Do you know the story of the cancelled Batman Arkham games? Rocksteady have released many games since their first Batman Arkham game, but there were actually multiple projects in development that were scrapped, never to see the light of day. Today we're going to be looking at all 4 of them to find out their history so you can decide for yourself if they were worth releasing or not. We are going to start at the earliest cancelled game and work our way through to the most recent. For this story we need to start off all the way back in 2009 with the release of Batman Arkham Asylum. Batman Arkham Asylum in 2025 is a pretty accessible game, which first released on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 and PC, but is also playable on most modern consoles. A very popular console at the time that surprisingly never had an Arkham Asylum port was the Nintendo Wii, which released 3 years earlier. I absolutely loved this console for how anyone could pick it up and play without being a gamer and still have a fun time with games like Mario Kart or Wii Sports, so it was pretty surprising to me that Warner Brothers seemed like they didn't attempt to port Arkham Asylum to the Wii during its peak of popularity, where I would say I'd be surprised if a household didn't have one at that time. The main issue with the Wii though is the hardware limitations, as the Wii was significantly less powerful than the PS3 and Xbox 360, which means Arkham Asylum hardly would be able to run on it unless Rocksteady made dramatic changes to the game. The common thing to do at the time for Wii games was to get another development team to create a cheaper, less demanding game for the Wii that still followed the same story but was different to the original port, so that game companies could maximize their profits by getting the games out on every platform. The crazy thing to hear that in 2016 it was revealed by a YouTube channel called Redfly Studio that there actually was a Wii version of Arkham Asylum in development, and provided us gameplay proof showing us the combat and stealth of this game. Redfly Studio, the development team that worked on Thor: God of Thunder and Star Wars Force Unleashed 2, both for the Wii, was tasked by Warner Brothers at some point to develop an Arkham Asylum port. In this not even 2-minute video, they show us plenty of Batman Arkham's core features that people loved, such as detective vision, silent takedowns, gliding, grappling to vantage points, and somehow even the free flow combat, which looks really good in my opinion. It seems like the events of the game were set in Gotham rather than Arkham Asylum at some point, but maybe this was done for just the tutorial stage and was to explain what happened before the events of Arkham Asylum, where Joker kidnapped the mayor before we capture him like we see in the comic Road to Arkham, so I definitely think this would have been cool to see. Another cool thing is the massive Joker hot air balloon that Joker's thugs used to get on top of the roof, because I like how it leans into that bit more goofier side of Batman. They apparently didn't have too long of development time before the game was cancelled, as shown in the description of the video. A demo of Arkham Asylum we made for the Wii, showing off what potential gameplay could look like. Not bad for a few weeks of work. I think it would have been really cool to see what this game would feel like, even if it was just a demo version we could get our hands on. If it was based on what happened just before Arkham Asylum, then I think it would have been a really fun way to experience it rather than just looking to the comics for info. I think not having an Arkham Asylum game on the Wii was a huge missed opportunity for Warner Brothers, but this next game I argue is a bigger missed opportunity that Warner Brothers should have taken. The Arkham games have barely made an appearance on handheld devices, with the only game apart from mobile being made for handheld was Arkham Origins Blackgate, which originally released for the 3DS and the PS Vita. This could have been the second handheld release, as all the way back in 2009 there would have been the first one, which was a port for the Arkham Asylum for the Nintendo DS in the works. The development team, Full Fat Studios, who worked on games such as Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, and 3 different The Sims expansion packs for the DS, were given the task of making Batman Arkham Asylum for the DS, which was probably a huge task on their hands, especially how the handheld was probably one of the weakest of that console generation, but it was up there for being one of the most popular due to its affordability and the accessibility for casual gamers. Full Fat Studios began development on the game in 2007, but no one outside of the development of the game really knew its existence. This was until December 7th, 2020, when user Super Dark Mime 4 posted their findings on X, formerly known as Twitter, with a screenshot of the DS version of Arkham Asylum starting starting screen. This was incredible, and to make things even better, Super Dark Mime provided a link in order to download a playable demo that could be played on a DS or an emulator. We can see in this playable demo that it's very rough, even by looking at the starting screen, which didn't even have the Arkham Asylum logo and instead went for Christian Bale's Batman logo and Arkham Asylum scratched into the wall. Just have a look at the starting screen cinematic for this game. Sadly, I can't play the music for it due to copyright, but I replaced it with Shadow of Colossus's music as it sounds extremely similar, funnily enough. Makes me wonder if they plan to have a different main theme from the main console port, or maybe this was just a placeholder at the time. What's interesting about this version is that the suit for Batman is blue rather than black, which kinda looks similar to what we saw in the mainline console version of Batman Arkham Asylum, but from the 2007 build of the game, which had a more navy colour to it. When we load into the game, it's obvious that this was very early in its development, with the game feeling pretty bare. For starters, the map on top of the screen is actually just a PNG, which doesn't accurately represent where the player is located. There are enemies in this build of the game, but they don't take any damage and will drain your health bar if you stand too close, while staying in an idle animation, as if the player is invisible, so I don't think they were properly programmed yet. Batman, on the other hand, actually has most of his functionality. He's able to kick, punch, run, and sneak around. He doesn't seem to have any options to use the gadgets though, as we can see that he's a utility belt and a batarang in his first slot, with 5 other slots that aren't unlocked yet. In this build we have 2 locations, the outside on a rooftop and inside of the building, which doesn't really have much to offer apart from 2 henchmen. One thing I do like about this game is the aesthetic, as it does look like Gotham from the outside and does match the design that Rocksteady went for when they created the background for Arkham Asylum. We aren't given much information about this game apart from this demo. Some of this could have taken place outside of Arkham Asylum or as a prequel, but with only this to go off of, I could only guess that they had the same idea as Red Fly Studio, where they would show us a bit more of Gotham City, which was lacking on the PC, Xbox and PlayStation version. I think this was a huge missed opportunity for Warner Brothers for both the Wii and the DS, as they were insanely popular at the time, but maybe they felt that having ports that weren't as up to par or groundbreaking as the mainline ports would damage the reputation of the game, and that's why both plugs were pulled on the development early on. I think we can all agree that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League left a lot of Arkham fans disappointed, to say the least, but did you know that there was a Suicide Squad Arkham game that was being worked on much earlier by another studio? In the end credits scene of Batman Arkham Origins, Amanda Waller approaches Deathstroke with the offer to join her team, the Suicide Squad.
And what happens if I don't sign?
You rot in here, or you work for me.
This game is hinted at further in Arkham Origins Blackgate, when Amanda Waller takes Deadshot and Bronze Tiger to add to the team.
Time enough for that, Captain Flynn. Catwoman did do us a great service.
And what's that, Director Waller? Leading us to those 2 degenerates?
You see degenerates, Captain? I see soldiers.
This was originally planned to lead up to a Suicide Squad game, not made by Rocksteady, but by Warner Brothers Montreal, which actually started development all the way back in 2010 apparently, where Jeff John, who is a famous comic book writer and at the time the chief creative officer at DC, revealed at San Diego Comic-Con that the game was in development and that they hoped to release it around the same time as the Suicide Squad movie by David Ayer, and described the game as hardcore violent, probably similar to the edgy teen vibe that the 2016 movie was aiming for. Fans that may have been hyped for the game heard nothing, and this went on for multiple years. This was until a Kotaku article by Jason Schreier came out in December 2016, where he reported that the game that WB Montreal were working on for at least 2 years was cancelled. Jason says that hints of the existence has been floating around for just as long. I heard it was a co-op game, and that it failed to impress Warner Brothers management during greenlight meetings, but not much else. The cancellation would have been after multiple people left the company, and the people that took over didn't believe in the game, feeling it was not good enough. Not much is known about this game, no gameplay or footage was leaked to go off of, and we have no idea what the story could have been focused on. My only guess is that Deathstroke, Deadshot and Bronze Tiger were the confirmed team of the Suicide Squad, with most likely Harley Quinn being the fourth and probably the last character of the team, unless they were going to continue this on, similar to how Kill the Justice League worked, adding players in DLC. The game may have had free flow combat in mind, with Bronze Tiger and Deathstroke being more melee focused characters, which I feel would have really elevated the game. It was a critique when I first played Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, that it was such a shame not to have the free flow combat in it, to make it stick out from generic live service games. Warner Brothers Montreal, although disappointed, probably believed that the cancellation of the Suicide Squad game was a good thing though, as this meant more time and resources could be allocated to their next big game that definitely couldn't get cancelled. Right? After the release of Batman Arkham Knight, people were hungry for more Batman, although Rocksteady had already stated that Arkham Knight was their last, but this didn't mean that no Arkham game was going to be made, it just meant that Rocksteady weren't going to make it themselves. Little did people know that behind the scenes, Warner Brothers Montreal were looking to make their own Batman Arkham game. Rather than playing it safe and making a sequel to Arkham Origins, which some may have assumed that they would naturally go for, they opted to head 10 years into the future after the end of Arkham Knight, with a grown-up Damian Wayne as the main character with Bruce Wayne mentoring him. Looking at the concept art that was leaked, we can find some really interesting drawings. Damian's suit looks very familiar. The suit really reminds me of the heavily armoured version of Batman Beyond's suit, which Rocksteady created for Arkham Knight. Damian does have two suits in the concept art, with an all-black suit being the second suit, but it's not said if he was going to get a suit change during the game, or maybe this was just ideas being thrown around of what the main suit could be. We even see that Bruce gets his own suit, which is a black and red design similar to Damian's, where the concept artist Jared S. Marantz described Bruce at the time being a much older Batman, and the suit was really holding this beaten and broken hero together, which makes sense after all these years of crime fighting, taking a mental and physical toll on Bruce. There were multiple villains that were leaked in the concept art. One of these villains would have been the daughter of Black Mask, which would have been a cool storyline, especially how we saw Jason Todd kill their father in the Red Hood story pack. Two-Face was apparently going to make his return as the Judge, who's another personality of Harvey Dent, who's a vigilante who takes down criminals, so I wonder if this would have played into the main story. An interesting character who I associate more being a Flash or a Superman villain makes an appearance, this being Gorilla Grodd. It would have been really cool to see him, as we actually get a reference to him in Arkham Knight's Season of Infamy Beneath the Surface DLC, where we can see in the Iron Heights prison that one of the cells has his name scratched into the door, so maybe Rocksteady were hinting at his later appearance. A resurrected Poison Ivy would have made an appearance in this game at some point, which makes sense as after her death in Arkham Knight, we can see that there's a flower left where she died, and we even see this idea used in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League with a kid version of Poison Ivy. A lesser known character who hasn't appeared in the Arkhamverse at all, that being White Rabbit. White Rabbit is a Batman villain who we saw most recently in Peacemaker Season 2. This version of White Rabbit was much older than we have seen before, and I'm not sure how she would have played into the plot of the game, but it's still a cool inclusion. The last character in the concept art is Dick Grayson, who looks like an older version of Tim Drake with his shaved head and beard. In this concept art, he also wasn't wearing his Nightwing outfit, so maybe he made a brief appearance in the game, but not much is known. In June 2025, concept art was shared by Rodri Perlaer, which was never confirmed to be for this game, but many speculate it was for it, so I'm going to share it, so don't take it as gospel. In the photos that were provided, we can see a clear render of Damian Wayne, and comparing the neck of Damian's suit to Bruce's suit in the concept art, they do have some similarities. We also see a render of Bruce, which looks much different to Bruce's face in Arkham Knight, but in fairness, has Bruce's face ever been consistent between the games? In this photo, we can see that he's a leg brace and a walking stick, which is actually mentioned in the leaks for Project Sabbath, meaning that there's a high chance of these being official models. The third character is Killer Croc, which is interesting as his physique has completely changed since we last saw him in the Season of Infamy, looking less mutated. The weird thing about this Killer Croc image is that at the bottom of it we can see a character that I'm not really sure who he is. The character at first glance looks disfigured, but it seems like the character is just wearing a suit over him. So let me know who you think it is. The last character of this render is Huntress, who has been referenced multiple times in an interview with Vicky Vale and Quincy Sharp and on Oracle's computer at the clock tower, but she never made a proper appearance. So this is pretty cool to see an Arkham version of Huntress if this is true. Huntress could have been a cool playable character, but apart from this 3D model, we don't know how involved she was going to be in the game. In 2016, a podcast named Bite Size Impressions, one of the main sources of the leaks of the game, revealed that there were plenty more characters that were going to feature, and although there was no concept art for them, they were at least able to mention a lot more characters than what was originally known. Flamingo, an insane but incredibly skilled assassin, Katana, who we would have seen in Suicide Squad 2016, Talon from the Court of Owls, the DD twins who you may know from Terry McGinnis's Batman Beyond, Mr. Freeze somehow, which I don't really like if this is true, as that would mean they pretty much retconned his DLC, Nocturna, a Batman villain who can teleport short distances, Abattoir, who's a serial killer that murdered his own family, and lastly Harvey Bullock. It seemed like WB Montreal were going to go for more obscure characters in Batman's rogue gallery, which I think would have been a really interesting idea in my opinion, just to change things up and show us people who we haven't really seen before. Moving on to the setting, and in a leaked concept art we can see a good look of how Gotham would have looked like post Batman Arkham Knight. In the centre we can see a rundown Wayne Enterprise building which looks abandoned for quite some time. This makes me wonder what happened between those 10 years. We know that Lucius Fox took over Wayne Enterprises after Bruce's apparent death, which seemed like a good replacement, but maybe due to the company being associated with Batman made it a target for criminals that wanted some sort of revenge, or maybe as simple as the negative reception leading to investors pulling out of the company, leaving it with not much choice but to close. In the next photo we see Gotham fairly run down, with graffiti that reads "The end is here." Near the top of the picture we can see a Gotham News building from the concept art. It seems like Gotham's layout was going to be completely different, with buildings far more spread out. This is probably where the new vehicle would come into play. In the third and final image, we have an action shot of Damian, who seems to be trying to break into a restricted area where a turret is firing at him and the guard is running away. Not much context to this, but maybe this could have worked similar to Arkham Knight, where some areas were blocked from the Batmobile getting access until you progress the game further. I'm sure most of you noticed that in the second and third concept art picture, Damian is driving the Batcycle. We can see that this was going to be pretty well armoured, similar to the Batmobile, as in the leaked poster. We can see some sort of turret firing at the cycle that the cycle seems to be able to resist to a certain degree. Luckily there's more concept art of the Batcycle that Damian drives, which one has red highlights on, matching Damian's suit, but also another piece of art that is all black with a bat symbol on the front of the bike, which looks really cool in my opinion. I think the Batcycle would have been a really cool idea to have for traversal that was similar to Arkham Knight, but while still keeping it fresh, as the cycle could have been faster and could have been more mobile. The Batcycle could have also been more vulnerable than the Batmobile, as it doesn't provide the same amount of cover, which means Damian more likely would have had to have been more strategic with his approach to combat. Something really cool that happened in July 2025 is that there were further leaks of the game. In this leak, we actually got footage of Project Sabbath, which I will let play for you. Although this is only a few seconds long, it's still pretty exciting. We see Damian Wayne's Batman ambush Killer Croc and chase after him on a motorbike. This definitely seems like it was very early on in development, but it's interesting to see that the bat cycle looks different from the concept art we saw previously. The model used for Killer Croc also looks quite different, as it looks like WB Montreal used Killer Croc's model from Arkham Origins as a placeholder. There's no real context to the scene, but it is incredible to finally have some footage of Project Sabbath, even if we had to wait nearly 10 years to get it. Sadly, in 2017, the game was scrapped, and the reason why? Well, the voice actor for Damian Wayne, who you may know for voicing Spider-Man, is Josh Keaton, who accused the leakers of Project Sabbath as being the main reason for the game's cancellation.
The moment when you technically voiced Batman on a Spider-Man meme video. Yeah, that's true. I think you can do good as Batman, rip Kevin Conroy. You know what? I would love to get a shot at Batman. I almost did. There was a game that I was going to be a part of that I was going to play Batman, and it wasn't going to be Bruce Wayne Batman. It was a different Batman. But yeah, the game, like everything about the game got leaked on some forum, and they ended up shutting it down. I'd done like 3 or 4 sessions on it, and that was the end of that game. Bummer. Bummer. Thanks, leaks.
Now, Jason Schreier from Bloomberg did come out to disagree with this point, but sadly did not provide the actual reason for the game getting cut. So to this day, there's no definitive answer, and with Warner Brothers unlikely to mention Project Sabbath, we may never hear for a good while more. It's a massive shame, as although there were parts that I dislike, I still would have loved to have played the game and to see what all these ideas could have been in the final product. One of the biggest features that were going to be introduced in this Batman Arkham game was the Nemesis system, which first appeared in Shadow of Mordor, where NPCs would remember past interactions. For example, if a thug bet Batman, then the next time they would meet, the NPC would mock him. Or if Batman beats a thug multiple times, then the thug will be frightened of Batman, adding a lot more uniqueness to players' games, and would add so much more replayability. This would have worked so well for the Batman Arkham games, and probably was the reason why we were going to get so many lesser known characters that would be dotted around the map that Batman could encounter and defeat, but sadly we may never see this in action, as Warner Brothers keep that patent close to their chest and haven't used it since the Shadow of War game. So that are the 4 known cancelled Batman Arkham games that never saw the light of day. Be sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below if you could pick one of these games to be released, which one would it be? That's all for now. My name is Foe, and Slan.